I may have been born blind, but I was not entirely sightless as my peers would have thought me to be. After all, if one of them would have at least listened in during our early years in history of magic, it wasn't exactly a kept secret that Salazar Slytherin was born a gifted Legilimens. Although the books may have failed to note was that it was an ability that could be passed down to his descendants, which I used to my full advantage. As long as I kept myself from curiously wanting to breach any of the professors' minds or prodding too far into the vast thoughts of the student populace, I'd found myself managing to stay afloat in my daily studies and wanderings inside the castle. But the question still remains on what made the new 5th year any different? For all my curiosity, I, of course, didn't miss out on the chance to try finding out more about this newcomer. Although what I'd failed to disclose to Sebastian up till now was how I was frustratingly met with silence every time I tried to glean into the new Ravenclaw's mind. The only sounds that flowed into my mind were the gentle lapping of waves. Ironically, these were the very sounds that lulled me into a restful nap in remembrance. Having challenged myself to stay awake during my first class in attendance with Professor Binns, sleep had then found its way to me during my free time after. I'd chosen a discreet spot by the side of the stairwell in the bell tower entryway, when I was then jolted into wakefulness at the panicked huffs that came barging in through the double doors. I remained silent, hearing the scared whispers about a troll being in Hogsmeade, their voices trailing off towards the North Hall. Although incensed at my rude awakening, I took this as a sign to continue on with the remainder of my day, thinking of dropping by Sebastian's class to ask if he'd already gotten a head start on our charms assignment. To my surprise, however, Professor Weasley was said to have dismissed her class earlier than usual, and that none of Sebastian's classmates had even seen him in attendance that afternoon. The halls were now filled with whispers of the supposed troll attack in Hogsmeade, and the portraits gossiping over how Ferdinand Pratt spotted the notorious gang leader, Victor Rookwood, at the Three Broomsticks. I tried to brush off the slow, uneasy feeling rising in the back of my mind. The Undercroft provided a moment's reprieve against the surmounting thoughts that started to plague me, giving me enough time to gather my bearings until dinner time came around that my suspicions were brought to light. While dinner went on to be a tasteless affair, I still caught myself spying on any of the professors at their table on the podium. I gathered that Professor Weasley left her seat earlier, trying not to think about the gravity the troll attack in Hogsmeade had caused when even the new student's guardian, Professor Fig, hadn't come for dinner. Still, I was already planning on how to ask the deputy headmistress in a roundabout way concerning the whereabouts of my friend, when I heard the telltale ignition of flames from a nearby flue flame just as I was passing by the Hogwarts architect statue.
Weasley's certain to hear about the troll attack soon if she hasn't already. Don't want to risk another detention for getting back after hours.
I couldn't help feeling the weight of worry lift from my shoulders at distantly hearing Sebastian's voice, although a frown instantly marred my features upon hearing what our new classmate had to say next.
I was hoping you'd consider heading to the hospital wing before retiring for the night. Just to be certain an actual medic properly tends to your head injury from earlier.
Nothing a good night's rest wouldn't fix. The thing you should concern yourself with was our plans on supposedly spending study period together, remember?
I almost snickered at Sebastian's attempt on wanting to spend more time with the new student, only shaking my head at the girl's tired reply.
All right. I think I owe you that much at the very least.
And I think you'll need to tell me why Victor Rookwood has you in his sights at some point.
I tensed at the mention of the Dark Wizard's name, furrowing my brows at the thought that they've directly come across the infamous crime lord.
But we can talk about that on another time. For the moment, I should bid you good night.
Choosing to stalk back to the Great Hall flew flames. It didn't take long for me to quietly mull over what I'd heard Sebastian last say as I sat in the privacy of our dorm. This was an interrogation I'd rather keep behind closed doors after all. So, patiently, I waited, silently tracking Sebastian's steps, before deciding to approach as my wand traced his form against the dark. Sebastian, what is this I've heard about Rookwood setting his sights on the new 5th year?
Gah!
Despite not truly meaning to catch Sebastian off guard, I was still surprised when I heard him stumble back while inadvertently projecting an image into my mind. a petite face framed with wavy brown locks against vibrant eyes of green that darkened as she looked up at me in concern. Her hand was raised to touch my face when...
For Salazar's sake, Ominis, what did I tell you about sneaking up on me like that?
The riveting image disappeared from my mind as Sebastian grunted from wherever he fell against. Judging from your rather lively reactions, I'd say there was no reason for me to worry after all. But you and I both know anything involving Rookwood spells trouble, Sebastian.
Merely a case of mistaken identity amidst the troll attack is all. Relax, Sirona had us covered.
It was obvious there was more to the afternoon's events than what Sebastian was willing to tell as I tried further probing. And what of the troll?
Singer handled the first one and, well, the second.
Wait, the second? There were 2 trolls in Hogsmeade this afternoon? I asked in disbelief, never having heard of such an incident with trolls, most especially 2 barging into the quaint wizarding village.
Yes, Ominis. Try to keep up. As I was saying, we handled the second troll.
You? You and the new 5th year? How?
As it turns out, it didn't seem like only sheer dumb luck that gave Beatrice the upper hand against me during our mock duel in Hecat's class this morning.
His almost fond tone had me narrowing my eyes. Sebastian, I know Anne would get ecstatic at the idea that you're curious about this new student, but Beatrice seems...
Ominis, you wouldn't be writing to Anne about today, would you?
I closed my eyes at this question, turning back instead to walk towards my bed's direction as I slowly answered, Between the 2 of us, you were the one who promised not to give your sister too much grief, didn't you? I smiled to myself, hearing Sebastian grumble something undecipherable before hearing a bottle being uncorked from his direction. The unmistakable scent of dittany wafted in the air. Choosing to leave Sebastian to rest, I, however, instinctively raised a hand in front of my face upon hearing him mentally call out my name. Efficiently catching a small package, the engraved symbol on the front that I felt was enough indication to know what it was. What is this? A bribe? I'd asked with a hint of a laugh, still pocketing the pack of peppermint toads.
Appreciation, actually.
I stood long enough by the door after hearing Sebastian's soft reply, ensuring he had already drifted off when I left. Taking in a steadying breath as I stepped into the common room, I let the sound of being under the Black Lake envelop my senses as I closed my eyes, all the while trying not to picture the piercing pair of verdant eyes that looked back at me in my mind's eye.
September 2nd, 1890. To say this was a long day would be an understatement, and I was hoping to express that with the same mundanity that would usually come with attending one's first classes at the start of term. Because, while Charms class was an exciting display of prowess during a game called Summoner's Court, and attending my Defense Against the Dark Arts class proved to be helpful in honing my defensive abilities, especially as it opened an opportunity for me to join an unofficial dueling club. What turned out to be the highlight of my day was my afternoon trip to Hogsmeade, however. I was only there to replenish some of my lost school supplies. After all, no one could have possibly predicted the troll attack that took place right after. My classmate, Sebastian, was luckily there with me. He seems to be a good wizard to have on your side, and the new wand I've acquired at Ollivander's seemed to have also greatly contributed to fending off the troll. And while I would have written more about the unpleasant encounter I'd had of Ranrock and an unsavory local called Rookwood, my eyes now grew heavy with sleep. I was sure they've now had an inkling of whatever ancient magic I could see traces of, but to what end I had yet to find out. For the moment, however, I let sleep envelop me, wondering what tomorrow may bring.